Good day everyone. I am Elson Ihamon, a second year BS Ed Mathematics student from Northeast Shotton campus. So for today's video, I am going to tackle about the Unit 1, the definition, goals, and scope of special and inclusive education. Letter B, the inclusive education in other countries, the IDEA in the US. But before we proceed to our discussion, I have here a quote. IDEA isn't about disabilities. It is about abilities. It's about giving students the tools and opportunities they need to reach their full potential. So this quote emphasizes the transformative nature of IDEA. It highlights that the focus of IDEA is not on the limitations or disabilities of students, but rather on recognizing and nurturing their abilities. The law aims to provide students with the necessary resources and accommodations to help them overcome barriers and achieve their goals. So our learning objectives, K, identify the different categories of disabilities recognized under IDEA. S, apply the knowledge of IDEA to create individualized education programs or IEP tailored to the unique needs of students with disabilities. A, foster a commitment to social justice and advocacy by advocating students with disabilities to have equal access to education and opportunities for students with disabilities. Inclusive education. As we all know, United States was one of the countries that has high quality when it comes to education. U.S. law does not address inclusive education. However, the National Center of Education Restructuring and Inclusion developed a definition of inclusion in education in 1995, providing equitable educational services to all students, including those with disabilities, to prepare them for a productive lives. So, No Child Left Behind or NCLB does not specifically mention inclusion, but it mandates that U.S. schools must be held accountable for education outcomes for all students, including those within any category of disability. Special education, according to the U.S. Department of Education, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or the IDEA, is a law that makes available free appropriate public education, or FAPE, to eligible children with disabilities throughout the nation. With the passage of the IDEA, children with disabilities were entitled to special education. So what is IDEA in the US? So IDEA stands for Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. It is a law that makes available and free appropriate public education to eligible children with disability. So it is a law that protects and helps students with disability to be able to achieve and experience being at a normal school. The categories covered by IDEA or the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act includes autism. When we say autism, these are those students often have problems with social communication, interaction, restricted or repetitive behaviors or interests, different ways of learning, moving, or paying attention. Deaf blindness, deafness, emotional disturbance. Emotional disturbance are those students or children who experience panic disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, separation anxiety, social phobia, and depression. Hearing impairment, intellectual disability, multiple disabilities, orthopedic impairment. Orthopedic impairment includes defects of disorders of the bones and muscles. A child may be missing part of all of a limb due to trauma, disease, or a birth disorder such as club foot. This other health impairment, including attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, specific learning disability, including dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, and other learning differences. When we say dyslexia, it is a learning difficulty that primarily affects the skills involved in accurate and fluent word reading and spelling. Characteristics of these are difficulties in phonological awareness, verbal memory, and verbal processing speed. Dyscalculia is the trouble of recognizing numbers, learning to count, or recognizing basic patterns. Dysgraphia is the neurological condition and learning difference in which someone has difficulty with writing for their age level. And other learning differences, speech or language impairment, traumatic brain injury, and visual impairment. Individuals with Disabilities Education Act in the U.S. outlines several key practices to ensure provision of special education and related services to children with disabilities. Some of the practices of IDEA includes child find. Child find schools are required to actively identify and locate children with disabilities who may be in a need of special education services. This includes conducting screenings, evaluations, and assessment to determine eligibility for services. The next one is Individualized Education Program or IEP. Individualized Education Program, IDEA mandates the development of an individualized education program for each child with disability. For example, a child with autism might have an IEP that includes speech therapy and social skills training. The next one is Free Appropriate Public Education or FAP. The education provided must be tailored to their unique needs and provided at no cost to their families. The IDEA or the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act ensures that children with disabilities are entitled to free appropriate public education. For example, a school district might provide a student with a learning disability with specialized instruction to help them keep up with the curriculum. The next one is least restrictive environment or LRE. Students should be educated with their non-disabled peers to the greatest extent possible while still receiving the necessary supports and services. For example, a child with a physical disability might be provided with aids and services that allows them to participate in a regular classroom setting. Next is related services. IDEA or Individuals with Disabilities Education Act requires the provision of related services that are necessary to support the child's special education needs. Those services may include speech therapy, counseling, occupational therapy, physical therapy, and more. The next one is procedural safeguards. Individuals with Disabilities Education Act establishes procedural safeguards to protect the rights of children with disabilities and their parents. This includes the right to participate in the development of child's IEP or individualized education program, the rights to receive prior written notice of any proposed changes to the child's educational placement or services. Transition services to help students with disabilities prepare for life after high school. These services focus on developing skills and goals related to education, employment, and independent living. Those practices work together to ensure that children with disabilities receive appropriate and individualized education services that meet their unique needs while also promoting their inclusion and success in school and beyond.